So here we are, 4 reports. I think if these had been done without the volunteer help, we'd be looking at maybe as much as $100,000 for the cost of all this work. So essentially, it is the role of volunteers that have made this happen. It's also the role of the task force which has made this happen. So without the work of the task force and of Ann Kershaw's willingness to start this ball rolling, our presentation this afternoon would not be with you. So the task force, it did indeed have a mandate to study issues related to arts and culture in the community and to see if in fact a cultural complex, and the phrase is a difficult one, whether this should be a cultural centre or a cultural complex is something which clearly will unfold over time. But the idea is to bring everybody together in one location so that symbiosis, words like symbiosis and cooperation become the game of the day. However, it's got to be argued each of these proposals could stand on their own. For example, if there was a private donor for one particular component of the proposal, one could see this being what drives the proposal and where it may well be. I give you the example of the Chan Centre in UBC, which took about 10 years to develop. And when they did, Chan said he wanted it well seen, so that's why the forest up on Southwest Marine Drive was cleared so they could build the Chan Centre. I'm going to bore you for a moment with the facts of our region. We are indeed a fast-growing region, but the people who are coming here are the very people we see in this room this afternoon. We are a high-proportioned retirement community. Most communities in BC have about 42% of their population about our age. Here, we're about 56%. And that's likely to continue, and our growth is likely to continue, but will likely slow down. So we're looking at a community maybe by 2036, and hands up who will still be here. In 2036, we expect about 37,000 people, whereas right now we've probably got somewhere between 29 and 30,000 people. The fact is, these people, you, are really involved in the arts and culture already, the volunteers. It's a highly volunteer-oriented section of our community. So here we're talking of something for our future and their future. We're talking of something that may be quite a while to make happen, but nonetheless it is about our future. The first report to be written was about a performance centre for the Sunshine Coast by the Sunshine Coast Performance Centre Society. This is a non-profit society established in 2008, and it was created especially to put together a proposal for a 450-seat performance hall. As you'll see as we go through this, there are certain parts of the proposal that are very specific in terms of you can accurately predict what you need. The performance hall is something that is very woolly, very difficult to come down with very hard figures. So much of it is, if you like, an act of faith, as perhaps it was for doing other performance halls elsewhere in British Columbia. But the board believed that by doing this, our community would be enhanced both artistically, culturally, and possibly, more likely, commercially. If we look at the facts now, which are very soft, certainly talking with Deborah a few minutes ago, dance is a big thing, bigger than we have perceived in our presentation. But the Coast Recital Society have over-demand for seats. In fact, I think if you really press the issue, you could easily fill 325 seats now with not that much advertising. And in fact, you'll hear later, places like the Yukon Arts Centre, their classical side of performance has a higher use than any other. I think we've got to look at where we are right now. Very few shows really are sold out, but when they are, they're local community things, or they tend to be classical music. So we're talking of the future rather than now. What is desperately needed, though, is the right acoustics, the right, support space both up front and at the back. We're talking of, could it be a possible place as a temporary home during summer for somebody like the Vancouver or the Victoria Symphonies? But most critically, and what has driven this, as you'll see in a picture in a moment or two, is the real need for rehearsal space for our community orchestra, band and so on, and our choirs. And if you try to bring these together, it is very, very difficult in rehearsal to find the space. Then there's the whole concept of education and teaching. Then there's another side, which is the dull side, if you like, and that is the need to store music, to store uniforms, including, I've still got my shirt, by the way.
Oh, have you? Bring it back.
I will. But if we compare ourselves with other communities, we really just don't compare. There we are, crowded out in Roberts Creek. Now, if you were in that room as that rehearsal was occurring, you would come out stunned because the timpani was right next to you and it was a very painful experience. This is not a place to bring a choir of 40 to 70 people, let alone an orchestra of 40 people. If you compare us with elsewhere, and if you look at this, the pattern in these numbers, there is no pattern. There's nothing related to the community in size. Raven's Cry seats, I think, have I got it right, Deborah, 274? Heritage Theatre is about 146. Shattuck is 200. If you look at other communities, Campbell River, the Tidemark Theatre, 435. And if you look on the right side of this spreadsheet, you'll see the populations are very close to what we have here on the coast. Sid Williams. Louise and I went to the pantomime Aladdin at Christmas in Sid Williams Theatre. It was incredible, and they do it in the most appalling backstage circumstance. However, if you go to, say, down the road to Nanaimo, it's a different story, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. But looking at those comparisons, it's really hard to draw a line as to what we should actually build here. Would you agree? Look at the numbers, they really are quite difficult. So here's the Nanaimo Port Theatre, 800 seats, right next to the ferries, right next to downtown, within the core of the town. This is a theatre that is really quite remarkable in that the theatre will do everything, and backstage it has everything, including workshop. The stage itself, it can be changeable acoustically and dramatically, quite easily because of the fly and because of the acoustic screens that you can see at the top of the picture. On the side walls, where you can see the white light shining, these can be changed from hard walls of concrete and wood to walls which include a kind of carpet finish that can be softening and completely killing the reverberation. If you look at the back of the stage where you can see seats and another spotlight, they have a shell that they can bring out, beautiful thing made of wood, and you can pull battens in and out of this. And on one side is carpet and on the other side is wood. So they can fine-tune this for classical music where you need good reverberation, down to no reverberation at all for rock and whatever else. This is a model of what should be built. It's clearly larger than we need here, but if you look at what we should build using the formula, if you like, developed from this, we would only build 168 seats. Now, here's the latest one up in the secondary school in Powell River. Very handsome little theatre. The acoustics are dealt with by running a drapery around the auditorium. This seats 402. If you were to use that proportion to the regional district proportion of Powell River, we should be building something that's probably in the region of 576 seats. What would be in the performance centre would be obviously the hall in which you perform, associated gathering space, certainly something that would be favourable to the audience being in a good mood as they enter the hall. Rehearsal space, and you will hear later that the rehearsal space could well be built first. It's certainly the most desperately needed. And I think this is where we could put arts organisation offices, and the management space could include ticket offices for all the events that occur on the coast, for example. Storage, very important. Workshops, if we could build the right workshops, it would save a lot of people a lot of trouble trying to find temporary space for the manufacturing of sets and so on and so forth. Clearly kitchen space, laundry, and can you believe there has to be a loading dock? Because if you don't bring your semi-trailer up to the back door of the stage, you're in trouble. And the theatre in Nanaimo has a door that is soundproof, so they could even be loading into the back of the facility whilst the performance is still going on the stage. The model that we've seen that works well is the Festival Performance Hall in the Charles Stockey Centre in Parry Sound, Ontario. They put it together with the Bobby Orr Hall of Fame. And they tell me now nobody visits the Bobby Orr Hall of Fame. Who is Bobby Orr? So if we look at what we're proposing, if we were looking at a model, this will be it. It's very similar in size. It doesn't have the capability that we would like. So our Scheme 1 would try to meet everybody's needs. But we have a variety of proposals, because when you're making proposals to potential donors, you have to show that you've got a flexible mind, if nothing else. If we were to go for broke, if we were to go for the scheme that is by clearly one of the best, we're probably looking at somewhere around $20 million in, yes, last year's money. For this you get everything. You get all the booths back of the hall to do all your spotlights and your sound and your acoustics. You get all the stuff at the back of your stage to prepare what's going on. You'd have the rehearsal space. You'd probably have the piano in an acoustic chamber that would come up onto the stage ready to be played just about. But looking at these options, clearly we could, and maybe we will, because it depends how this unfolds. We may start with a stage 1 rehearsal hall, which is about a couple of thousand square feet, and that might cost about $2.5 to $3 million. This does not include the site, it does not include parking. Parking is an issue. I counted cars at a CRS concert one Sunday afternoon and was astonished to find what the proportion was. Nothing in the SCRD bylaws or the District of Sechelt bylaws would ever accommodate or require the parking that I saw outside of the Raven's Cry. So we're saying at this point we should be looking at parking 225 cars. But this, as you will see later, could serve everybody because they would be at different times. And we certainly need a loading bay, and we certainly need parking for the semi-trailer too. Not to mention a bus. Quite often when you get, say, the Naden band turning up, they have a great big bus comes with them. If you were looking at a model just for music, and you were saying, well, this is all we can ever do, the best model is the Wigmore Hall in London. The sound that comes out of a quartet on this stage is just unbelievable. It's a sound like you have never heard. It sounds like a full orchestra. This is a very simple building. It was built before the First World War by the Bechstein piano people. And of course, since they were not on the right side at the beginning of World War I, it was taken over by the Brits and called Wigmore Hall. But this is a very simple space. And if indeed it came to just classical music of a very small variety, and jazz, small group jazz, small group classical, this kind of concept would work very well. So, what we have here is a proposal which I think is right for our times, bearing in mind the future of the Sunshine Coast. We're looking, this picture you're seeing on the screen is indeed the Stockey Centre in Parry Sound. Very elegant building inside. I wouldn't show you what it looks like outside, because architecturally it could be a lot better.